All right, so let's see our roadmap and so what we have achieved so far. We have achieved what the basics of the system development. So starting from what information system is, and then we talked about how we can develop a system or an information system for that matter, and then the key phases involved in system development or system development life cycle. And after that, we discussed the roles and skills involved in system development. We've seen different roles, and then we talked about the predictive versus the adaptive approach, the traditional versus the agile ways of developing systems, and we identified each phase and each approach, and we characterized based on the underlying characteristics of these approaches. And now we are headed to what today we talk about the stakeholders, what these stakeholders are, what do they want. We will find out how we can understand what they want and how we can gather requirements from these stakeholders. And we will discuss the data gathering methods in identifying what these stakeholders want.
We gonna see all that in this video.
Alright, so now let's jump into the first phase, which is the project initiation phase. And here we identify the problem and document the objectives of the solution system, which is the new system. And after that, it is about obtaining approval to commence or to begin the project or the actual project. So here the output is the system vision document. So the system vision document contains three things, which we will discuss later, but pretty much the first phase, the problem identification or project initiation phase, has 4 activities listed here. So after going through these activities, as I said earlier, there is the system vision document, which is the output of this phase. And the first component of this system vision document is that the problem description. So the problem description is the summary of the problem in the existing system, and if there is no system, priori the business domain. So in the business domain, what is the problem that you want to solve or the new system will solve? So that is the problem description. So after that, there is the system capability. So the system capability is what is the new system going to perform. So you will specify in terms of the code, for example, creating forms, retrieving forms, and then U for updating, and then D for deleting. So in terms of that, you might put the system capabilities and what that specific system is going to perform. So after that, there is the business benefits. So the business benefits actually is after the deployment of the system, what do you expect in the business domain? For example, if you are doing if you are developing a system for a hospital, what happens after the deployment? So you will increase patient satisfaction, you will increase medical record retrieval time, and such things are mentioned under the business benefits section of the system vision document. So that is it. And the second one is the planning and monitoring phase, and Here, as its name suggests, it's about planning the activities involved in the phases of the SDLC. So here you determine the major components or functional areas that are needed. So functional areas in terms of is identifying key activities that has to be performed during the SDLC. So for example, you might say in the analysis phase, we will gather requirements. So under gathering requirements, we will conduct an interview, and then we will define requirements, we will prioritize requirements, and then these functional areas are then assigned, as you can see in the second, to each iteration. So if you are going to perform these in an agile approach, which is pretty much the modern approach of system development, then you will need to assign iteration by iteration. So these functional areas are going to be assigned for each iteration. So that is the planning phase. So, and then obviously you will determine team members and their responsibilities. So who is going to do what, who is going to conduct the interview, and such things will be assigned. So the other ones, the identifying the tasks required for the iteration, organize and sequence these tasks into scheduling using Gantt chart or using the other project management tools will be done here. And then identify required resources, as mentioned earlier, assigning people, and then the task is associated with people. After identifying the expertise of these people, you will assign tasks based on their expertise. So that is pretty much the planning and monitoring activity. So in short, you establish the project environment and then schedule the work, and then you staff and allocate resources, and then evaluate work processes. Then you will monitor progress and make a correction. That is the planning phase. So an example would be a work breakdown structure, which you identify the functional areas and then the activities involved in those functional areas, and then after that the durations that is expected. So there is what we call the PERT chart, which is the project evaluation review technique, which is used to determine the duration of the task by calculating the expected time, and then there is the procedure to calculate that, but you will determine the duration of each task, and then you can use the diagram to show your work breakdown structure. So that is pretty much the planning phase. And then system analysis activities. Here there are around 5 activities involved in the system analysis, which would be what we will talk about for the next hour, I think. So in the system analysis, there is gathering detailed information. So you need to gather a detailed information, and then you would need to define requirements, and then you will prioritize requirements and develop user interface dialogues, evaluate requirements with users. So here you are talking about requirements. So you need to gather detailed information and then define specific requirements, and then prioritize those requirements, model requirements, and then at last you need to evaluate requirements with the user. So the analysis phase, as discussed last time, is about understanding the system environment, or understanding the current system, the business domain. So here you talk about requirements, and that enables you to understand the business. So requirements definition. So analysis is undertaken to understand a business function and develop system requirements. So there is the waterfall methodology or model, and then there is the agile model. So in the waterfall, as you can predict, it is done once, the analysis, whereas in the agile methodology, so it's done in each iteration or in each sprint. So that is pretty much the analysis phase. And discussing the activities involved in the analysis phase, there is a gathering detailed information. So here the key questions are, do we have all the information? And inside we need to define what the system must do. So here it's about probing toward the requirements. So using different techniques, you will need to gather much information as possible to understand the business domain. So the next one is defining requirements. So here you will define requirements in terms of functional requirements and non-functional requirements, and then after that you will prioritize requirements. Here we have seen that requirements can be there are two types, mandatory versus optional. So you will prioritize the mandatory requirements at first to be performed in the early phases, and then the optional ones to be performed later based on your resource. So the other one is developing prototypes. So here you need to develop prototypes, or we call it the user interface dialog, which is the sample of the new system, and then you will interact with the users and you will inform the users to pretty much operate on it, what they perform on the business area, and then they will give you feedbacks and what really needs to be improved. So the last one is evaluating requirements with users. So after you have gathered requirements, after you have defined requirements and all that, you need to meet with the users and then evaluate those requirements if they are correct or not. So here is the key questions, or key question is, should we continue and design and implement the functionality we have proposed? So before proceeding to designing, before proceeding to implementation, you need to ask the users whether the requirement gathered reflects their opinion, or not their opinion, but reflects the business process that they actually perform. So that needs to be established before going to further phases. So the definition of requirement gathering is that you gather requirements using range of techniques, so different angles, developing a deep understanding of the business domain. So after the, as I said, after the gathering the requirements, or after the analysis phase, using different fact-finding techniques for investigating system requirements, the analyst should become as knowledgeable as the business domain users, or to build credibility, that is. So for example, let's say you are from Tedros campus, right? So, and you have no clue about how a hospital business process or operations are performed, and then you started to gather requirements, you started to analyze these requirements by defining them, prioritizing them, and all the steps. And after all that, as an analyst, you need to be as informed as, or as knowledgeable as the business domain users, as the clerk, as the physician, about the processes. So that is pretty much the end product of the analysis phase. So it is about, again, bringing fresh eyes to the problem. So those people working in that specific area for a long time have almost considered it is normal, it is actually good to work in those specific areas. So they think, they assume that there is no underlying problem that needs to be solved because they have been working on that area. So you need to bring some fresh perspectives to the problem. So you need to show them in different directions that it is not actually normal, it is not actually non-problematic, that things can be modified. So here it is about the BPR, what we call the business process re-engineering. So in business process re-engineering, it's about reinventing previous business processes into modifying them into an enhanced version using different tools. Here we use the information technology or information system to modify the business processes or business operations of a system. For example, a hospital, you record using the pen and paper. So you insert the intervention of the information technology or information systems, and then all will be re-engineered into a new which is much convenient, much faster method of performing this business processes. So that is pretty much the requirement gathering, and then later you will need to talk about verifying with the client these requirements. After being collected, they have to be, verified by the client whether they are correct or not. And let's talk about what requirements are. So now we've been talking about requirements just too many times. So what are requirements? So system requirements are all the activities the new system must perform or support, and the constraints that the new system must meet. So here requirements are the demands of the end users or the stakeholders that they want the new system to perform. And then even if the old system was performing, that is part of the requirements. So there are two categories to system requirements, which is first one, functional requirements and non-functional. So functional requirements are the activities that the system must perform, that is business uses to which the system will be applied. So when we say business uses, it is specific to that business domain. For example, if it is a bank system, there is the requirement can be check balance, transfer money, which is transferring money to other accounts. So these requirements, functional requirements, are unique to that business domain that we are trying to develop the system to. So non-functional requirements are the characteristics of the system other than those activities it must perform or support. So here it is still a must to have non-functional requirements, but rather than the functional requirements, which are specific to the business domain, non-functional requirements are the characteristics of the system. So there is what we call the verbs to understand the functional and non-functional requirements. So the F in the verbs stands for the functional requirement, and then the U stands for the usability requirement, the R for reliability, P for performance, and S for system requirements. So security requirements. So here it is an acronym to remind or to better remind the non-functional requirements. So usability requirement is about user interface, ease of use of the system or the interface, and then reliability requirements are whether the system is dependable or not. It is about how often the system exhibits such behaviors as service outages and incorrect processing, and how it detects and recovers from those problems. So in reliability, is the system reliable enough, or are there downtimes to the system that makes you ponder that the system is unreliable? So the third one is performance requirements. Here you need to talk about two things, throughput and response time. So throughput is about supporting number of users in a simultaneous session. That is throughput. And response time is about the response that the system gives you after being requested or after being clicked or whatever. This is the response time. So how fast that the system respond to a user's requests, that is the response time. So in terms of security, it's about encryption, decryption. Whenever there is a network, a connection between different components of the system, and then are there any encryption and decryption mechanisms? And then in terms of security, again, you need to talk about the authorization and authentication, which are two different things. So in terms of authorization, it's about giving specific privilege to your users. And for example, in hospital information system, you might give access to medical records for physicians, while clerks have no access to the detailed information about the, for example, history, medical history, and the other things will be revoked or will not be accessible to the clerk. So it's about giving different privilege to different hierarchy of users. And when you come to the authentication, it's about giving usernames and passwords, so that only specific people with those usernames and passwords can log into the system. So that's pretty much it. And there are also other requirements like implementation requirements, physical requirements, and others. So the FERPS Plus explains that. And for a summary, it's F for functional requirements, as I said. So it's about business rules and processes specifically. And non-functional requirements is about usability, reliability, performance, security, and here you talk about the interface, the ease of use, the failure rate, which is the reliability, and other important phenomena which are associated with the non-functional requirements. So there was an activity which is to identify the requirements of a student information system. So what are the functional and non-functional requirements of the student information system? Can you think about that? So after thinking about the requirements, so here it's about functional requirement, as we talked about. It is a requirement, a type of requirement which is specific to that business process. So here we have the student information system. So in the student information system, there is a registering a student, assigning a course, and other requirements related to the student information system, while the non-functional requirement will be, as mentioned in the FERPS, it is the usability, whether the interface is usable or not, the reliability, the performance, the security would be the non-functional requirements. So think about that. And for example, think about the hospital information systems functional versus non-functional requirements.